And he has no special affectation or relationship with Laurie Strode at all. He's not her brother, all that other shit. None of that ever happened.
Yeah, yeah, I heard they got rid of that.
There just ends up being a showdown between him and them because he was brought to the place by other characters because there's a twist, a weird twist in the movie. Um, and but yeah, it was a good movie. I was thoroughly engaged the whole time. It never really slowed down for me. It's like, what are they going to do next for this kind of movie, which is not. I'm not a horror genre guy. I don't like to see people blown to bits and cut up, unless there's some. I mean, okay, aliens type movies, I like those, but not just the gory, crazy ones. And this isn't really gory or crazy. It's pretty tame. Not as tame as the first one, but it is a modern movie. But yeah, it's well done. It has weird beats of humor and kind of subversive shit going on in it, where it does make some references to the fact that yeah, this is happening in 2018.
Yeah, I heard
This,
that there's like a little kid in the movie that's pretty funny because he's basically just like the audience surrogate. Like, I'm not fucking going there. The guy's killing people.
yeah, fuck this. Yeah, little black kid, he's hilarious. Get the fuck out of here! He's killing people. Killing his babysitter. It's like I'm trucking out the door. It's like yeah, exactly. That's what everyone does. It's like I'm not. Will Patton's on this, who's an actor I always liked. He plays like sheriff. Yeah, you know him. So
Yeah, that sounds. Well, when you say Patton, when you say Patton, I immediately go to Patton Oswalt, but I'm pretty sure I know.
yeah, you'll recognize him.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah, you know that guy. He's kind of the gravelly voice, like "What the fuck are you doing?" He's always that character. He's never been a lead. He's always a strong
yeah.
supporting.
He's a character actor.
Yeah, and Jamie Lee Curtis is awesome. She just doesn't. I don't see her in enough things.
Oh, she's like, well, if you're watching like Activa commercials,
Yeah, I've seen her talking about taking a dump with this better.
she's
Which
like
actually took her advice, but I do something else.
she's like a really cool mom, or like I don't know, just for she like still hangs out with her son, and he's like really into video games, and like she'll go to like video games events in cosplay so people don't know it's her.
Oh, okay. She's just like undercover.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I remember like like her son went to a fighting game tournament, and he was just there to like watch it. It wasn't playing or anything. And she dressed up as Vega from Street Fighter because he has the mask, and so she can walk around with the mask all day.
Yeah, the last movie I saw her in was that Veronica Mars movie.
I don't remember she was in that. They're bringing
Really?
that. They're bringing it back to Hulu.
Oh, are they? Okay, it's back again, huh?
Yeah.
She was like it was almost like a cameo,
Oh, okay.
but it's like, oh, I haven't seen her in a while, and she's only like 59, so she's pretty young still.
So she was 19 when she did Halloween.
Yeah, she was real young.
Okay, yeah.
No, she was. Oh, I forget how old she
Well, it's a
was.
40-year anniversary. You said the 40-year anniversary, right?
It's 78, so that would that'd be 40 years. Fuck, I'm getting old. Yeah, she does a great job in this movie. And so does the gal who plays her daughter, Judy Greer.
Yeah,
Remember her?
yeah,
Yeah, she's always like the happy, kind of bubbly.
yeah.
Act.
She's a fucking what's his name? Guy directs like This Is 40 and 40-Year-Old Virgin and stuff like that.
Yeah, Apatow.
Yeah,
His wife.
that's yeah, that's his wife.
Okay, I knew it was something like that. She
Yeah,
almost seemed miscast at first because she was so bubbly compared to Jamie Lee Curtis.
yeah.
Because the makeup and the character they made for Jamie Lee Curtis in this movie is like she looked like a drunk. And I think she actually was. They talked about a little bit of alcoholism, but essentially this whole thing destroyed her life
Yeah.
because she had a kid that would Judy Greer was her daughter, and she's been married twice, and she raised her like a lunatic. Like she has a nut ranch that's just designed to kill Michael Myers. Like she lives in some house that's got like bars on the window and stuff. But she is a deeply damaged person. She's not like the heroine of the story. She is, but she's not like some SWAT team member like rappelling in to kill Michael Myers. She's fucked up, and she has very broken relationship with her daughter and her granddaughter. Because you know, in the movie, the thing is they're like, well, it's time to transfer him to the other state mental hospital because we're closing down all our mental hospitals, and we're gonna move him, you know, the night before Halloween, which is, of course, you know, takes over the bus, which you don't see. You just see the results of it, where there's just crazy people wandering around on the road, which is kind of an homage to the first one. He doesn't do a bus, but he does something at the asylum, and he steals the lady's car and drives into Haddonfield. But of course, he winds up in Haddonfield again because you know that's where the loony bin.
This is where I like to kill people.
Yeah, well, but see, the thing is with him, there's nothing he likes or dislikes. He could have jumped in the Jeep and drove to Chicago killing people. It makes no difference to him. He's just walking around killing people. And they kind of make that clear in the movie, is like, this guy's motivation is just to kill. He doesn't care who or where. It just everyone else kind of coalesces around him and almost tries to assign meaning to it that isn't there. Like his psychiatrist in this movie is an interesting character and plays a big small part in bringing them together. Like, you know, the whole reason that guy exists is just to bring Michael and Laurie Strode back together, because he doesn't give a fuck about you know, her in particular. He's just there to kill people. It's everyone else that's trying to assign meaning to this, and in the end it's just like, no, he's just evil. Like the original, because the guy who played his original strength, of course, has been dead for a while. The English guy, what's his name?
Oh, something Pleasance.
Yeah, Donald Pleasance. Yeah.
Yeah.
That guy's been dead for years, but he did all the follow-up movies too, as Dr. Loomis. But they brought him back as a voice in this. They were playing all the old tapes.
Yeah,
so the people they meet, that you first meet, that are doing the thing, are just like podcasters that are doing things about murder.
Yeah.
And they
they're doing the third season of Lore.
yeah, pretty much. And they're just going around talking to people and talking to the shrink and showing Michael Myers the mask. But he never says a word in the whole movie, and you don't really see his face.
Yeah.
The only thing you get to see is that his left eye is like turned white from having a coat hanger jammed into it.
Okay.
But that's it. You don't get to see his whole face. But then again, he's just a force of nature, and everything else happens around, which is actually a good throwback to the first movie, because that's all he was in the first movie.
Yeah.
He kind of fixated on these girls and found out where they were, and it was a little more methodical. This movie, he's just fucking killing everyone he runs into. Kills a kid in this movie, that's a first for him. But yeah, he just has a thing with killing people with all kinds of interesting ways, and of course it ends in a way that leaves it open-ended for a sequel. And everyone said they'd be willing to do one, but they wouldn't lose their minds if they didn't. So, I mean, it doesn't end in an obvious way that there's a sequel. You think in the end it's like, oh yeah, she won, because the whole house was just designed as a Michael Myers killing factory. It's like, well, there's no way he really got out of that. But then the thing in the way they shoot it is like, you don't see him anymore. So yeah, that was Halloween. It's worth seeing. I mean, if you want to just take a vacation in a movie for 2 hours. Like I said, funny that, because that's what I told Stacy when I was watching the credits at the beginning. It's like, oh, this is brought to you by the comic team that brought you Eastbound and Down. She's like, what are you talking about? It's like, you know, Danny McBride, Eastbound and Down. It didn't really have a lot of that humor in it. It had some of it.
No, yeah.
They played it straight.
I don't know. Yeah, that Blumhouse production thing, they've hit on a stride of making really cheap movies make hundreds of millions of dollars. So they know what they're doing, I guess.
I heard Jamie Lee Curtis put up some money for this movie. I don't know if it's true or not.
Oh, maybe. I doubt it cost a whole lot to make. So
it was like $14 million. I don't know what advertising cost.
Oh, it's probably double it. You know.
Yeah, so it was probably a $30 million movie, but it's made like, I don't know, $200 million or more.
No, but I think it made like 80 its first weekend, and it's made like 30 its next. So.
Oh, okay.
But I mean, that's what horror movies do. They're really cheap to produce, and they make lots of money. Potentially, there's tons of horror movies that don't even get released, but they still, people rent them at Redbox or whatever. It's like Hatchet 3. What's this? I don't even remember Hatchet 1. It's like, oh, they all suck, but
174 million so far.
okay.
Yeah, so it's doing pretty good.
Was that worldwide or just domestic?
I'm just on our what's the one?
Box Office Mojo.
Yeah, that's the one that usually breaks it down. But yeah. So that was interesting. I enjoyed that movie. Not a perfect film, but
it's it's the
Compared
right time for the right time of the year. Right film for the
Yeah.
right time of the year. Halloween for Halloween.
yeah, well, compared to what it had become,
Yeah.
it was just a crappy, just a little bit better than the Friday the 13th movies.
Yeah,
sequel.
pretty much.
Not a little bit better, but not a whole lot.
Well, actually, no, because there's like some value. There's some value to those later Friday the 13th movies. Like some of them are actually good, and if they're not good, at least they're like hilarious in some way,
Yeah, they're just
either intentionally or unintentionally.
yeah.
Whereas Halloween always seems to be pretty deadly serious, and its sequels are generally not that good, except for like people said Halloween 3 was pretty good, but that has nothing to do with the Michael Myers lore.
Yeah, that was incidentally good. Has a surprise film.
About Christmas.
Yeah.
Well, it's Halloween, but there's Christmas toys in it or whatever, some shit.
Face off or something. Yeah.
But no, I thought it was like Halloween 5, the Chris Michael Myers. I know that had Paul Rudd in it, so I saw a bunch of clips of that. I was like, oh, this is fucking weird.
An 18-year-old Paul Rudd,
Yeah.
or however old he was. He was young.
I mean, he looks about the same, but he's definitely way younger.
Well, me and Stacy went and saw that in the theater because she's of course a big Halloween fan. We were just dating at the time, and she's like, "Yeah, you want to see this?" I was like, "This is gonna suck." Oh, it might be good. It's like based on what? The last two movies? It's okay. We can go do this. And we did.
And Halloween 2 is all right. It's almost more of like an action. It's almost more of an Aliens version of Halloween.
Yeah, you could tell they were kind of going in a different way with it. Yeah, that's a fun franchise. I built a model based on it. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, on Stacy's Facebook, I bought a model of Michael Myers. I've never done a figure.
Yeah.
Because I don't like face painting. I'm uncomfortable with it. But the nice thing about Michael Myers, he's wearing a mask. Paint it black, age it up a little bit, or paint it white, put some black aging around the edges. It's a good-looking model. So that was my first figure model. I made that for Stacy this year for Halloween. And she really likes it. So that's cool. Oh, speaking of models, let's have some more model talk because we love that.
Okay.
I got one coming next week. I've been waiting a long time for this. I think I've told you about this. I told you about the 2-foot-long Klingon Katinga. It's coming from Polar Lights.
Maybe.
Yeah, comes with a fiber optic lighting kit. Comes with it.
Huh.
Yeah, it's going to be another big model for me to build. That's my favorite Star Trek ship. Is the motion picture? It's actually called the IKS Amar from the motion picture. So it's exactly like the models used in Star Trek: The Motion Picture. The opening attack sequence that has nothing to do with the rest of the movie. It's just some cool looking ships. This is the first model I've heard of that comes from a major company that includes resin parts in addition to the styrene parts because they could get the detail out of it more with the resin.
Yeah.
Which is like, oh wow, I've never. Usually that's like garage people or hop-up kits you buy for your models. So I don't have it yet, but next week it's going to be here, and I'm going to have something to do for a while. I haven't built or worked on any models in about 3 weeks because I've just been saving my money and waiting for this one.
Huh. That looks cool.
That should be fun. They actually, this is the biggest. They did a 1/350 scale of the Enterprise 2 years ago that came with the factory lighting kit. It was a big hit. So
Yeah, I saw a video of that. Looks pretty neat.
Yeah, it's actually well thought out. They solved the pylon problem on that one.
Is that just all one part as is?
No, it's not all one part, but it's not. Um, it's how do they do it? The lugs are. It's just a solid. The thing that comes up from the main hull, those are just solid lugs, solid pieces. You're not gluing them together.
Oh, okay.
So they're just thick enough that they can hold the weight. They do have a channel in them for wires. But,
Yeah, I saw that.
the problem with that kit, though, because that was their first lighted kit where it wasn't an aftermarket kit, it was actually being sold by Polar Lights as their engineered kit for it. But the wiring was really tight in that. You had to really turn some corners and tack that shit down because you didn't have any extra wire, any extra space. So they say they've solved a lot of those problems with this model. So we'll see. I'll just get mad and smash it. Anything's gonna happen.
This is after it gets blown up by some other ship.
Yeah, it's my damage continue. But yeah, we'll see how this goes. I've done one other lighted kit in my life, and I fucking hated it. We'll see how this goes. This is kind of neat though, because it's the way they molded it. It's molded in black, so you don't have to base black it to block out all the light from coming from inside where it shouldn't. And then all the pieces that go together have a lip on them, so the light can't bleed through. So they're not just straight piece to piece. They actually have a molded lip.
Huh.
We'll see how this goes. They usually do a pretty good job. Because Polar Lights is that company. They're actually from Indiana, and they bought up all the old Ertl licenses when Ertl went out of business.
Huh.
And they engineer everything in, I don't know, Elkhart, Indiana or someplace, and they send all the dies over to China to have it made.
Oh, yeah, of course.
But they're not making them here, but they engineer the dies and everything here and send them over there.
It's like Apple, engineer the United States, made in China.
Yeah.
Or it's like Breville. I think that's how you say it, Breville. They have that like really expensive tea maker I got one year. It's like a $300 tea maker with like a magnetic tea dipping thing.
Yeah.
They make a lot. They make a lot of really fancy stuff, but all that stuff it's engineered in London or the UK, and then it's all produced in China. But
Yeah, I have a toaster from I forget. It's a British toaster. Because the British are really into their toast. It has cool settings on it, like not so hot or a bit more. You know, it's worded like that. It's like, yeah, I can see the British doing that. But yeah, it's like, oh, cool, we got this British toaster. It wasn't even that expensive. You flip the box over, made in China. It's like, oh, of course. I mean, I have cookware. I don't know how you say this. I always said it Le Creuset or it's Le Creuset or whatever. It's French. It's like cast iron cookware.
okay.
And they're like, you know, a Dutch oven's $400. It's made in France, and everyone wanted it for that reason because it's a cast iron pot. It's enamel painted on the outside, and then it's got ceramic coating on the inside. So you get to cook with cast iron, but you don't have to deal with maintaining cast iron because it has ceramics inside it. Which, as long as you don't super cool it, they'll never fade. But even they've gotten in trouble because people in America, if you're paying $400 or $500 for a pot, that shit better be made in France. Well, because they've been trying to slip some Chinese shit in, and there was almost a revolt. Like, people are like, "Oh, look at the new prices on the Creuset stuff." It's like, yeah, it's that shit's made in China. Fuck that! I don't want a pot, you know. So yeah, I like all these companies that are. People are getting wise to it. It's like there's a lot of there was a German silverware maker they started moving their operations to China, and then all of a sudden their sales just but buying it. It's like, oh, we don't want. If I want to buy shit made in China, I'd go to fucking Walmart and buy shit in China. I'm not paying you $500 for a spoon and knife set, and you know you're making 4,000% profit on it. It's like the RC car stuff. I don't. Do you know any guys that are in RC?
No.
Oh yeah, someone gave me, a friend of mine who runs a business, kind of in that field, gave me a rundown on what the markup on RC stuff is. It's like stuff that's really expensive, it's like, oh yeah, those guys are marking that up almost 50%. It's like, really, who has a 50% profit margin? That's crazy. It's like, oh, that shit comes from China. They just mass produce it, and that's why if anything goes wrong with any of that stuff, they'll just give you a new one. It's like, oh yeah, here, just take another one, because like, yeah, they're some of the markup on some of that shit from China is crazy.
Well, yeah, because like
How some of it was, how bad some of it was.
because all so much except for like processors, so much high end technology is just mass produced in China. Like if you just go there and know how to build things, you could build things like for $10 and sell them for $300 here.
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty.
If you just know how the production cycle works or where the good stuff is. And who's not scamming you, or at least who's not scamming you right now.
Well, this started as a conversation about because of course all the models and stuff I built, some of it. Oh, who's the guy who directed the Lord of the Rings movies? What's his name? Jackson?
Peter Jackson.
He has a model kit making company. And
Huh.
They make all the models in New Zealand, and they're all World War I biplanes, and they're like the most awesome models. I mean, they're super detailed. Like their instruction books are in color, and they have original pictures in color that they colorized of what these biplanes in World War II really looked like. So it's like a painting and assembly guide, and they have histories in them. Like this one used the gear to do this or that, and but they're like $400, $300, $400 models, and they're like a tabletop model of a biplane. And there's kind of this debate, like, well, is that worth it? It's like, yeah, that's definitely a far superior product to ship made in China, but is it like really worth that? And then there's other guys talking about, well, are these tariffs going to affect our hobby that pretty much? I mean, my paints come from Europe, my brushes and my equipment comes from Japan. The models come from China. No one makes models in America. Some people in Britain make them, and some people, like I said, the New Zealand people. And the guys are like, no, it's not, because the fucking markup is so huge once it gets to America on a static thing like that. It's like there's no technology in that. It's just molded plastic. And it's like, yeah, the prices aren't going to go up a whole lot. They're going to go up a little bit, but they're not going to go up a lot because the markup on that stuff is so massive. Because their effective labor rate is still zero. It's like that's not your cost. You're not paying a lot for the Chinese guy to have a retirement plan and health care, any of that stuff. But it's also going to implode soon too. That's not people in China are not going to be happy living that way. So, because they're basically the last step before full automation. Because I can imagine a time in 20 years where it's like, remember when human beings used to make stuff in China? It's like that's going to be like a day we hearken back to. It's like, yeah, people actually made this shit in China. Because then it's all going to come back to the respective countries, but it's just going to be a bunch of robots.
Yeah.
Which is going to do something for somebody. I don't know. Or we're just going to launch into this, this low-level civil war we're already having in this country is just going to become a full-on fucking, well, I don't have a job anymore. Let's get out there and start killing people. Seems to be what people want to do.
Or the robots. Man versus machine.
Yeah, just fight the machines.
And then they send the drones after us.
Oh, it's gray goo. They send the nanotech.
Oh, okay.
And the whole world melts down. That's when EMP religions form. People worship electromagnetic pulse. Blessed be the EMP from the Martians. That's how I'm going to cash in. I'm going to start an EMP religion. Like those people at the end of one of that Planet of the Apes movies. Remember they worshiped the nuclear bombs?
Yeah.
The Omega cult or whatever. Or some shit like that. Yeah. So the next time you're buying something from somebody in China, really lace into them about how much they're marking it up. Or better yet, go in front of Apple headquarters and throw bricks at the building. Is that iPhone you're buying for $1,000? Yeah, I got $50 in it. I don't know. Maybe it's
But throw that. But go to Ireland and throw that brick at the like lawyer's office at their
Tax show. Yeah. Really fight those. Did you ever see when the camera crew tried to go in there?
No.
Yeah, the big Apple office in Ireland.
No.
Yeah, like who's working here because nobody fucking worked there. Like a guy, turning the lights on and off randomly.
It's just a mail slot. They clear out the mail slot and wipe the floor down.
They were doing that Home Alone shit where they had like Michael Jordan taped to a train running on a track, so it looks like people are walking around in there. They wouldn't let him in though. The security people were adamant, like, you can't come in here. Oh, we just want to talk to some of the employees. Nope, can't do it. Can't do it. We're the we're not the Emerald Isle anymore. We're becoming the Isle of Man. It's just a tax haven. Speaking of which, Sinead O'Connor is now a Muslim.
Okay.
Yeah, she just converted to Islam. Her name is her Islam name is Shahuda, which means martyr. It's like, oh, so she's entering that suicide in game now. I see.
She's gonna light herself on fire on television.
Wow. Yeah, that Vietnamese monk shit.
Yes, I played a new game that's pretty interesting.
What's that?
Return of the Obra Dinn.
Spell that for me.
Obra, Obra, Dinn, Din.
Okay.
This is a video game about insurance adjusting in 1809.
That's wow.
So there is a ship that it's a ghost ship that is like run ashore or something, or they found it. It's owned by the East Indian Trading Company.
Okay.
That is right, East India Trading Company.
East India, yeah.
Okay.
East India.
And so like it's been abandoned. So they need to go on there and figure out like what the fuck happened and where is this insurance money going. So
who's getting paid?
Yeah, so you are an insurance adjuster for the East Indian Trading Company. The visuals are pretty weird. It's almost like a wireframe visual, but it's kind of filled in with like dots and X's, almost like pointillism, if you know that art style, where it's just a bunch of dots that eventually makes an image.
Oh, it's yeah, okay, kind of like a dot matrix looking image.
Yeah, but it's in 3D, so it's kind of has a wireframe look to it. So it's very simple looking, but it's very striking too.
Okay.
It's as a video game that's made by one guy. He did everything except for like the voice work and the translation.
This is like a super indie game, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. Lucas Pope.
This guy, he made Papers, Please. I'm not sure if you ever heard of that game. So Papers, Please. That's an older looking game. In that game, you're like a border guard who like looks at people's passports as they cross the border, and you have to like decide whether they can cross the border or not.
Okay.
And there's a lot of funny things, but there's this shit like you let somebody through and then ends up they be a suicide bomber. So crazy.
Dark.
Yeah. So in this one, so you go on the ship and you'll find a corpse, and then the sort of conceit of it is that you have a book from a surviving member of the crew. They abandoned the ship, and then they gave you this book that describes things about all the people on the ship.
Okay.
And essentially, you have to solve all their murders. And another thing you get, which is the sort of fantastical element, is that you get a watch that when you're near somebody's dead body, you like open it up, and then you're like, the screen will go black, and then it'll play like an audio clip, and you'll see the dialogue on the screen. And then once that dialogue ends, that dialogue usually ends at somebody's death, and then it'll like pop into the scene, and it's a scene frozen in time, and you'll see how that person was killed.
Oh, okay.
And then you can like look at all the people in the scene. It gives you all this there's like a picture because there was an artist on the boat, and so there's these 3 different pictures that use the cross reference everything. It's like all deduction. You have to figure out how the people died because you're never given anybody's name. But like the first one's pretty easy because it's like a guy gets shot and he says, "Captain, open the door," and then like you hear the door opening. It's like, I'll give you what you want, and then they shoots it. It's like, okay, the captain shot that guy. So you look at the manifest. It's like, that's the captain. He shot this guy. So you can you can click on the guy who's getting shot, and you can be like, all right, this guy was killed by the captain, but I still don't know like what his name is or who he is, but I know that's the captain.
Okay.
And like you figure out, and then you're not given complete information, so you kind of have to use a lot of inference to determine like how these people were killed. So like one thing I figured out early on is like all the people with hats, you know, kind of like the Captain Crunch hats or whatever.
Tri-cornered, yeah.
Yeah, like, okay, that's all the officers. And then you like look at the manifest and like, okay, all the officers have hats. So you can kind of like narrow that down. There's other stuff you figure out like you have like guys from Russia and guys from India, and it's like, okay, all the guys from the different countries, they're kind of like huddled together in the pictures. So like they kind of like separate themselves and hang out. And so they're like, okay, those guys are mostly together in this picture. There's a lot of weird stuff. There's like a kraken attacks the boat at some point.
Okay.
Yeah. I didn't even realize it because of the kind of how the wireframe stuff looks. It's like, oh, there's a storm going on and some rigging hit this person and like that's how they died. And I was like looking up into it and like, oh, that rigging's being held by a giant like octopus tentacle. It's like, that's fucking weird. No, yeah, it gets a lot weirder after that. There's like a full like almost like horror, like mystical stuff going on, but
Right. This is a cool looking game. I was watching a video of it while you were talking.
yeah.
It kind of has an interesting look to it.
And it's yeah, I got through like all these kind of scenes, and then I was like just kind of going through and trying to figure everything out, and I made some cool deductions, and at some point, and then I just like looked at what they all are, and filled it in, because after a while it gets kind of a hassle to kind of go back through all that stuff. Like it kind of takes a while, and like your walking speed is pretty slow. So
okay.
I just fuck it. I was like, what did what. So like one of the deductions I made that was kind of neat is that there's only 4 women on the boat. One you know of, she's like a princess, but like her name gets said in one of the scenes, so you know it's her. And then one of them is the captain's wife, and you figure out who she is like really early on, like almost like one of the first or second scenes.
Yeah.
And there's these other 2 women, and it's like, okay, I don't know who they are. And I went back to one of the scenes, and they're both in the scene. It's like, okay, that's her. And I'm like, and one of them says like Miss whatever. It's like, oh, one of them's married, one of them's not. And I went to go look at the left hands. One of them has a wedding ring, one of them doesn't. So then I was able to pick out who's who. There's another one where it's like a guy killed another guy, but before he killed him, he says like, "You killed my brother." I was like, all right, they're brothers. So then I went through the manifest and looked for last names that are the same.
Yeah.
And so I found 2 Peters. And then you have to determine, and then I found them in the photo. They're like right next to each other in the photo. It's like, well, how the fuck do I determine which brother's which? And then like I looked at the photo, and it's like one of them had like a receding hairline, and the other one didn't. And I'm like, okay, I'm guessing he's the older brother. And on the manifest list, he's higher above than the other guy. Like the other guy's like the last on the list. And I'm like, I'm gonna guess like he's been working on this boat longer, so he's the older brother, so he's higher up on the manifest. So that's him.
Huh.
So it's stuff like that. That's the kind of deductions you have to make.
It's like, I'm like Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah. And then like you can solve everything in 3s, so you can guess everything, because it's like so it's kind of like Clue. You have to say who killed what with what.
Who killed Colonel Mustard?
Yeah. Oh, you don't have to say where, but it's like who killed this person, who is the person that got killed, and what did they get killed with. And you have to get those 3 things right. And if you get 3 of them right, then it'll like lock it in. It'll say like, yes, that's right. So you have to get them done in pairs. So you can't just guess at it until it says you're right. So
Oh, okay. So it kind of builds on itself. You can't just throw things out there until you get the combination.
Yeah.
Okay.
Although some things are vague in a way that you can, it doesn't have to be exactly like you can say. It says, I think you can get away with saying someone was, because like there's the one where the like his wife gets killed by the rigging, But like, so like I said, she got killed by the rigging, and then I got 3 at one point. And it's like, yeah, that's correct. But I think you could also say because the Kraken was holding the rigging, I think you can say that she was clubbed by a terrible beast. Because that's because that's what they like. Whenever something's killed by the Kraken, you say like killed by a terrible beast. Because there's one thing where like a cannon blows up and like just blows a guy in half.
Yeah.
But the Kraken is holding the cannon. And I don't know if it intentionally meant to shoot the guy with a cannon, but you can say he was killed with a cannon by a terrible beast, and that works. So I think there's because there's a whole list of like things that there's like 20 different things you can say how people were killed. It's like one of them's electrocuted, and it's like, how the fuck does that happen? It's like 1800s. I don't know if there's electricity.
Struck by lightning.
Yep, that's it. That's exactly it.
Yeah.
One guy gets struck by lightning.
Okay.
And there's like stuff where like, I remember one of the things like I saw the Kraken had like flung a boat away. And there's like you'll get to an end of it and sometimes there's people like you never saw or you never saw their fate as they call it. And so they're like just so it's basically kind of up to you. And I never like picked it up as that was the ones I got it, but then I was curious. So like I wonder if all those people that get flung off the boat, like I just have to assume they like all drowned, right? And like can be. I think you can say they were killed by the beast somehow, but if you say they're all drowned by the beast or they all drowned, then that works too because you just never saw them again. You could just assume they all drowned.
Okay.
But then there's ones I didn't think of because there's like 3 people that like, get off the boat alive, and you actually have to say like they're alive and they're living where, and you have to use like all these different maps and stuff to determine that.
In Northumbria.
I think everybody is alive in Africa. Oh, the only people that are alive in Africa because I think when they like abandon the ship, they're near Africa. So.
Oh, okay. They didn't make it back home.
Yeah.
Don't want to talk about the Kraken, which they want to talk about. And it's like, hey, what about this watch? Get a lot of shit done with this watch.
But yeah, that was a really cool game. Like a lot of like you actually have to do your own investigation and cross-referencing stuff, and it doesn't really do it for you. So that was kind of neat.
Yeah,
those games where you have to like kind of bring a notebook.
Yeah, bring your thinking cap.
Yeah, the one I wanted to figure out, but just because it was kind of too much of a hassle to jump between scenes, was there's a part where like this guy dies of like pneumonia or something like that, and off in the corner, there's these Russian guys playing poker, and like you only know the Russian because like the subtitles is in the Cyrillic alphabet. It's like, oh, those 2 guys are Russian, and then I didn't know how to figure that out. Like, which Russian guy was it? I didn't go into that. Oh, there's another one that was really cool because there's a part where like in the photo, there's one of the photos called Justice at Sea, where they string up a guy and he's killed by a firing squad.
Oh, okay.
And so you go through that scene when he's killed by a firing squad, and you're like, well, how the fuck am I gonna say 4 people killed this guy? But like the way it's like suspends the scene, it's like you actually look at the bullet paths, and only one bullet actually kills the guy, and you have to like
figure out who the guy.
Yeah, you trace it back to that one guy. It's like that's the guy who actually killed him because he had the kill shot. But then you got to figure out who that guy is.
That's cool. So it's a lot of deductive reasoning. And now, what's the point of determining these deaths? Is that what the insurance is paying out?
Yes.
Okay.
So if some people are just
the ship or whatever is not part of the insurance.
No, that's a part of it because you like at the end of the game. Okay. At the end of the game, it's like $5,000 for ship loss, and then it's like. And then there's like stuff because a lot of people on the boat were like murdered by other people. It's like that estate is now owes us a fee of $25 or 25 pounds, and then like people that are like killed just doing their jobs, and it's like performed his service admirably, and his estate will be awarded 50 pounds,
50 guineas to his family. Yeah.
And then there's like people. It's like they couldn't even like find their families, or it's like some foreigner they don't know. It's like nobody claimed. Nobody claimed for their estate. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty cool. That's a good niche. It's like insurance investigation.
And you get to employ your racism as much as you want. Because at some point you have to make a determination. It's like, is that guy Indian looking?
Yeah. You can't tell in this black and white dot matrix. And then start employing like racist terms from that era. Like, is he a coolie?
Well, there's one guy, he had a bunch of like tattoos on him. I'm like, oh, is this guy like, this is a guy from like Samosa or something like that? And I believe he's like from New Guinea, which I'm not sure, like, is that like the same place or something? But
I don't know. Yeah, because the Maori, they have tattoos all over them, but they're like from New Zealand.
okay.
I'm not sure back then. No, there was a lot of tattoos.
Yeah, but that was like one guy's like, I was like, is there some cultural thing that I should know about this guy? Because he's the only guy with a bunch of tattoos.
Yeah.
And,
Queequeg from the, what was the ship called? Pequod
was that the name of the ship? Okay.
in Moby Dick. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's I only remember that from Metal Gear Solid 5 because the helicopters are named Queequeg and Pequod.
Oh,
And-
okay.
But like Pequod's like the little like lifeboat that the ship has, the Pequod has or something.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, they also learned some stuff about ships. Like I said, there's the stuff with like the guys with the hats, like they're most likely officers, or
Yeah.
or anybody with the hat probably has a more important title.
Yeah.
The stuff like top men, that's the guys that like work up in the rigging, because that's like everyone has a job description. It's like, so if this guy's working up the rigging, he's got to be a top man, so that like lowers that list down. And then seamen are just like usually guys below the deck, and there's like midshipmen and stuff like that. And there's a whole glossary to kind of like learn all these different terms and stuff like that.
Yeah. Where's the mizzen mast and what's the quarter deck and all that stuff?
Yeah. Well, the one I never heard of was the Orlop deck. Never heard of.
What's that?
I believe that's. I want to say that's the deck between the bottom deck and like the gun deck.
Okay.
There's like 4 different decks. So you had like your top deck, and then just below that was the gunner deck. So that's where all the cannons were. And then I think you had the Orlop deck, and then just below that was like where you store. That was like the storage deck or whatever.
That was called the gun whale, I think. I think. Yeah, because that's like the edge of the ship. They say ship's full. She's full to her gun whales. I remember most of the stuff I get from Moby Dick. One of my favorite books.
I don't think I've ever read Moby Dick.
Oh, it's an amazing book. It's not long. It's like not very long. Like 100 and some pages, I think.
Oh, maybe I'll just get a book on tape where it's like narrated by Vincent D'Onofrio or something.
Patrick Stewart did one.
Oh yeah.
Played Captain Ahab in a TV show of it too.
Okay.
Like that's a Patrick Stewart thing.
Yeah.
And then what's the other guy? No, he played. He didn't play Ahab. Who did Hopkins play? Captain Bligh. Yeah. In that weird kind of sweaty Michael Mann '80s film, The Bounty, with.
Oh, the Mutiny of HMS Bounty.
Yeah, because it was. Hopkins.
Or was that the book and it was called The Bounty? The book was, or the movie is called
The movie
Bounty.
was called The Bounty.
That had Mel Gibson in it.
Yeah, Mel Gibson, younger Mel Gibson, as the young man who ran to the natives, and then Anthony Hopkins as Captain Bligh. It's a great movie. It's cool to watch. I mean, you can tell why these people went nuts. It was like well done. It's kind of one of those overlooked movies. Because it showed what people at sea were like, because their doctor was a complete alcoholic. By the 6 months into the mission, they go see the doctor who at the beginning was like a very rational, proper English gentleman. And by the end, the guy went and saw him about an infection on his arm, and he's like, "I have defecated in my pants," and then he fell out. He was so drunk, he didn't know what the fuck he was doing.
That was one of the mistakes I got in the game, is I mistook the cook for the butcher.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah.
Because the guy who I thought was a cook, he had that apron on him. I was like, that's what a cook looks like. But then I was like, it made sense. Like, oh yeah, if you're the butcher, you'd have an apron on because you're gonna get blood all over yourself.
Right.
And then the cook just had a giant fork.
Didn't have a big goofy chef's hat.
Nope.
Chef Boyardee.
No. Just a giant fork.
Return of the Obra Dinn. old school gaming,
Yeah.
deductive reasoning game, right?
Yep. I think it's only out for PC right now, but that'll probably come to everything. I mean, only one guy makes it, so I don't know if he's really in the mood to port that to everything, but we'll see.
Port that over to Linux.
He's only spent 5 years making this.
Yeah. Do they still have the Oregon Trail games? Has anyone gone deep retro on that, where it's just like a text-only game?
Yeah, I mean, I think originally that was a text game, and then they had, I think like the early IBM versions were text only, but
I don't know if there's been any new old school text-only games.
oh yeah, there's a ton of text only games out there. Or there's some visual text games out there that I like. There's one that's really quick called "Don't Shit Your Pants." That one's pretty fun.
Yeah, I remember I played that
Yeah,
at your house, I think.
but yeah, they still make those games. I mean, that's way easier to make those games than the other. I mean, I've Java programmed a game like that.
Oh, those are fun. Let's see. We watched a movie this week.
Yep.
This is the 1977 Japanese horror film House.
I actually saw had comedy in its selection too. The comedy horror movie.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, accidentally, incidentally, or maybe on purpose. I don't know.
Yeah. Because I don't like. There's a lot of like cultural things with Japan. Because there's like this weird fucking movie, and it's like a modern day movie, a Japanese movie where like just people are killing themselves in like mass formations. And it's like, is this supposed to be funny or serious? Because I know they have a really serious problem with suicide in Japan. And it's like, I don't know if they're going for this is supposed to make a point or if it's supposed to be funny. Because it's weirdly funny to watch 65 people jump into the front of a train at one time. Because that's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's 65 people wanting to kill themselves simultaneously. That's pretty rare.
And I think at some point... Well, I haven't watched the movie. I almost think of this almost like The Happening, where like something happens and now all these, because I think like an entire senior class jumps off the roof of the building.
Okay.
So,
was The Happening based on a Japanese movie?
No, I don't think. Because I don't think M. Night Shyamalan has ever done an adaptation.
Oh, okay.
He's directed other people's scripts. I can't remember if he's done an adaptation yet or not. Oh no, he did Avatar. I guess that's an adaptation. But he was a producer on the original cartoon show, so. Yeah,
I'm not sure. I'll let you know a dirty secret. I kind of like The Happening just for its weirdness.
Yeah, no, there's like things about The Happening, but it's like ultimately a bad movie that's that's like hilarious.
Deeply flawed logically and all kinds of ways, but it's like,
and bad acting, miscasting.
Yes. Yes.
But like there's that part like early on where like the cop like blows his brains out and then people just walk up and use the gun to kill themselves. Like that's fucking terrifying.
Yeah, there's things I like the construction guys when they're working on the site and all of a sudden the guy's looking up. It's like, what's he looking at? And people are just flying off that building, like hitting the ground, and it's like, oh, that's a weird visual because it goes on. There's a lot of things in that movie where the scenes go on like way longer than they normally would.
Yeah,
it's not a good movie.
This is the part where like the guy's trying to feed himself to a bear, and then this guy like runs himself over with a lawnmower.
The guy with the lawnmower is pretty fucking cool because I know how hard that is because they all have safety catches on them, so you can't do that. So you got to like bypass 3 or 4 things and that's not a clean death either. That's like jumping feet first into a wood chipper. Feel that one.
But I think that was the only movie I went to in theaters, and like I went in expecting one movie and I had a great time laughing at a terrible movie.
Yeah, it definitely took itself. If they had introduced more humor into it, definitely took itself way too seriously.
And also just Mark Wahlberg as a science teacher, like it's completely unbelievable.
Sorry, Mark, I didn't buy it. But anyway, we watched this movie. For some reason, this movie, when I was watching, and this movie is weird. Its pacing is really fucked up.
Yeah.
I sat down and I honestly was like, okay, I'm not going to do a lot of jumping around in this one. Because sometimes these foreign films, especially Japanese movies, I kind of move around a little bit to get a vibe for them. The Kurosawa films I never did because it's like they were pretty conventional in their structure. But this one I was like, okay, I'm just going to sit down and watch this because what the fuck is this? Because I watched the trailer and some of the promotional materials for this. This movie never came to America until like the early 2000s.
I said 2009, like it had a release. Like I think it came here in some ways, but it didn't really. Yeah, but it didn't really get a big release until 2009. Because I watched this movie, I was like, was Sam Raimi influenced by this? Because like so much of this was just like Evil Dead 2, and it's like, was he influenced by this? But like, no, there's like almost no way he could have seen this movie.
Yeah, this movie is again, that's the comedy elements of this. It reminded me a lot of. I was thinking like, oh, is this Evil Dead? Did they steal? Is this like Kurosawa, where like Star Wars supposedly tangentially came from this? But no, it wasn't. This was a movie. This was a movie made by a guy who was a fast cut like commercial director in Japan. What's his name? I can't do these names. Nobuhiko Obayashi.
Sounds good for me.
Yeah, I don't speak Japanese. I don't do the names. Just the cool sounding ones like Kurosawa. Like that. I head around that one. And Matanahara, I know that one because we knew a guy named Matanahara-san.
And Mifune.
Yes. But anyway, so this movie is a weird. Because usually I just straight out watch them. I don't look up any of the shit on them. I'll watch a trailer maybe, but I'll try not to get any information. I thought this was like an 80s movie.
Yeah.
It has that 80s look to it.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, this is an 80s thing. And then it does that weird animation / matte painting special effects.
Yeah, yeah, chroma key stuff.
Yeah, which really makes it look futuristic and cartoonish at the same time.
Yeah.
Not so much the special effects, and the special effects in this movie were just of the time, but like the big matte paintings behind like the train station and and the country. It's like, oh, this looks like a cartoon.
Yeah.
And this looks like every weird anime thing I've ever tried to watch from Japan.
I also like the first half of the movie. It's almost like a Monty Python sketch or something like that. It's not even a horror movie.
The guy's got a drum on his ass.
I can't get the drum off, and he's like there, and he's not even moving in normal ways. They like what would you call that? Stop motion animate him with like a drum on his ass.
Or not a drum, but a bucket.
A bucket, yeah.
There's a bucket on his ass, and someone's hitting it with sticks, and it's like they got these girls who look like the classic anime schoolgirls in Japan.
Yeah.
Kind of the schoolgirls dress. They have weird names. There's Gorgeous, Kung Fu, the Professor, Fantasy, and then the fat girl's called Mac, and she's not really fat.
Well, I guess by Japanese standards, maybe.
By Japanese standards, she's fat. And then you got Melody, Sweet, and Auntie. And then there's some other characters, but they all have these are nicknames. But these nicknames also like denote characteristics about them,
and like how they're going to perish.
Yeah, how they're going to perish and or try to defend themselves. Yeah, because like Mac Kung Fu tries to do Kung Fu and effectively defends herself, and then her legs come back in a later scene and try to just her legs though.
Did I miss something? Did I miss the part where Mac dies, or does she just show up with a bucket as a head in a bucket at some point?
Yeah, she's like because Auntie's eating her, and then her head flies up in the air and bites the other girl on the ass. And then it's supposed to be like a warning. I don't know. Yeah,
it yells fantasy at her.
Yeah,
which is a common refrain in this movie where it's like somebody gets killed and the ghost yells fantasy.
Yeah, always the fantasy, but not any of the other characters' names. Just But I mean, even by Japanese movie standards, the logic in this movie falls apart.
Yeah.
Because at first I thought is like, oh, is this like a Scooby Doo thing? Like that Scooby Doo came to my mind, Evil Dead came to my mind, and then it's like, oh, even for fucking screwed up Japanese storytelling, this movie has jumped off the rails. Because the weird thing about this movie is it has strange, like, what would you call this? Not only this remind me of Evil Dead and like 80s MTV, but it also reminded me of, what's the guy's name who did the cat cartoons in the 70s? So they did like Coonskin and,
Oh, Ralph Bakshi?
yeah, this reminded me of like a Bashki thing, kind of in look and style.
Yeah.
Like a lot of weird action and zany
Like combination of different film types and a lot of air experimentation. Because a lot of like Ralph Bakshi stuff was like, here's cartoons driven on top of like live, like actual photography.
and then characters interacting in a weird way.
Yeah.
Like crazy shit happening, like, well, this guy exploded, or this girl is a fountain of blood and a clock now. What are we gonna look at these noodles? They're wonderful, and it's like, what the fuck is going on?
There's stuff with the watermelons.
Yeah, we're gonna put a watermelon in the well, and
yeah, I don't know how much of this is like is a cultural thing, or if it's just like, hey, we wanted to make an insane movie. But also, this was apparently made as a, or at least on the production side of like, was it Toho that made this? I can't remember the name.
House or something. Yeah.
This was like a reaction to Jaws. It's like Western horror movies.
Well, yeah, they wanted a horror movie. There was an essay or something somebody did. Some people try to go like, I read through a lot of pretentious essays about this, talking about, number one, how, well, for the Western mind, they won't really understand this, but I'm going to provide some exposition and I'm like, oh, okay, this guy's full of shit. And he was. But this was supposed to be a monster movie like Jaws without the monster, because the Japanese felt their horror genre movies had the stigma of Godzilla. So it's like, we've got to make a horror movie, but there can't be like a monster. There can't be. But even though this movie did have, like, the ant was a monster, the cat was a monster, but I mean, this was like a surreal horror film, shot by people who were trying to. I think like the directors never took acid, but was trying to imagine what it was like if he had taken acid.
Yeah. Also, yeah, they're doing a lot of experimentation with filming, because, like you said, there's like points where, like, they did a lot of like matte paintings that they're shooting on green screen that didn't seem necessary to do that, but they just wanted to fuck around and see what happened if they did.
Well, I think in this movie they wanted to take in-camera effects to like their furthest apex that they could in the late 70s.
Yeah,
because that's what seemed to, because there was a lot of like weird chunky movement.
I remember the part like where it's like it's like the weird camera turn with like the woman in the car at the end, and it's like clearly like in a studio with a green screen. It's like, that seemed entirely unnecessary.
Well, Banana Man, like there's a man in the car and he's a pile of bananas.
Yeah.
Like, oh, this is all just a matte painting and a green screen, and obviously so, and for no fucking reason. Yeah, I know exactly the scene you're talking about. It's the last 5 minutes of the movie.
And I don't even know who the fuck that character is.
I thought the ant
was that the aunt who had the baby or something?
I think she was like living in a fantasy within a fantasy.
Okay.
Killed all these girls, and now she gets to have her guy back from World War II. This is the first Japanese movie I've ever seen that really acknowledged World War II happening.
Oh, yeah.
Especially in the 70s. I mean, now they do, but it's only the evil people dropping A-bombs on them now. They vaguely talk about that. But yeah, this movie was weird because it actually acknowledged that there was a World War II and a lot of Japanese people died in it, including and sitting in a business suit in an aircraft getting shot to death, or not a business suit, but it seemed like he was flying an aircraft in what would be a formal uniform, not his flying uniform. I don't know much about that, but it seemed weird to me. It's like, and he's very stiff and he's not acting and he's being shot. But I guess none of these people were actors either.
Yeah, it was just like most of the girls were just people he worked with in commercials.
Yeah, they were like commercial actors who were used to doing static things like holding up a picture or, you know, marshmallows.
And
Or
because we're reading subtitles and don't know Japanese, like they may as well be the greatest actors in the world.
could be an Academy Award-winning performance for all I know. But however, when somebody says a bunch of shit and then just looks straight at the camera as if they're looking at the person, and then they do a jump cut and the person's not looking at the person who's looking at them, it's like, is that done for effect, or do these people just not know what the fuck they're doing? I don't know. I'm no film expert, but there seemed to be a lot, and there's a lot of weird editing in this movie.
Yeah, like
And-
intentionally so.
Yeah, and don't confuse us talking about like the horror scenes and all that stuff like this was a fun movie to watch, or its pacing was anything close to normal. It's like this movie was boring as shit for like an hour, and then once they get in the house and the cat starts vomiting walls of blood and everyone starts dying, it sort of hits the accelerator and it hits the brakes really hard, and because people are going to sit there and talk about all this shit that's going on, and then yell out character names, and then weird shit's gonna happen, and there's no logic in this movie. It's a lot of weird scenes.
It's like an effects movie, pretty much.
Yeah, it's like, what can we do? How much in-camera effects can we do in 1977?
I mean, it's like Evil Dead. It's like Evil Dead basically did a lot of the same shit, but like just did it more coherently and more consistently. Like they had, because like I said, they spend like an hour like building up this, like we have to get to the auntie's house, and whereas in Evil Dead 2 they recreate the events of Evil Dead 1 in like the first 10 minutes of the movie, and then immediately he's getting attacked, cutting off his arm, and having all that shit going on.
Yeah.
Whereas here, that's like near the last third of the movie is when that starts at.
Yeah, and it doesn't make and there's not horror logic or any kind of logic to anything that's happening. It's like, how do you defeat these attacks or stand up for yourself, or even have an expectation of how you're gonna die? It's like just a bunch of random weird Jonesy the cat shit's gonna happen, and
then a bed's eating you.
yeah, and a piano's eating you, and a giant eyeball's on the wall, and like I said, this is like an acid trip as described by someone who never did acid.
Well, I guess like a lot of the horror stuff was taken from the director's daughter. Like she had all these fears, and then they turned those into basically like kills in the movie.
I know the Japanese have some, and I'm not deeply inured to the Japanese culture. There's some shit about Japan and the Japanese I like, and I really think is cool, you know, like the Shinto period, and there's a few things, but there's stuff about like, because it's not a Christian culture, so a lot of things are like ghosts and demons. Like we have that here too, but for a lot of the Japanese stuff, it seems like our dead relatives are attacking us. Whereas here, because it's all based on honor and what have we done and how we shamed ourselves, we don't have a lot of shame here, obviously. And so it's like demons and ghosts are like a supernatural force or something from hell, or something that like we're supposed to align with the Christian God against. Whereas in Japan, it seems like they're amorphous things that do random shit for no reason, and there's honor tied into it, but you can't really please them. Like here we have like a book. We got like in The Exorcist, it's like the guy shows up and it's like, you're possessed by a demon and this is what we have to do to get it out. A demon is a force that comes into you that's like, it's not your fault. It's Satan, it's hell, and we're gonna hold the cross up to you and exorcise this demon. In Japan, like demons are like your pissed off relatives or something from the past or sorrow, and I don't quite understand it because it seems to mean a lot of different things in Japanese culture that doesn't translate very well here. Because I really want to like a lot of Japanese stuff because I see that some of it's cool, but a lot of it I just don't understand and never will, because it's like, what's the evil compelling force? Just give it a name. Let's put it in a box and define it, and then work, towards something. It's just like when the Ring was adapted to America. 'Cause The Ring is a great movie, a great American movie. It's not awesome, but it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Then you watch the Japanese version, It's like, well, this all comes from that. This has got to be the same thing. And then you watch, I think it's called Ringu or something.
Yeah, yeah.
And you watch it, and it's like, oh, what the fuck? It's like The Ring was pretty weird, and it's like, well, it's the adopted daughter, and she was from hell, and she was always evil. But you watch the Japanese version, you're like, I don't understand why this thing is evil. I know it does evil things, but what's it's doing? What is it doing? What's its code? How can I work my way around it and solve a problem?
Yeah, it's just, it's the new Michael Myers. It just kills something because it's there.
Yeah, it's just a random thing. It's a force of nature. But I have a lot of there's deficits in my understanding of Japanese culture, and when I watch movies like this, it's like I can sort of see why this is cool because this is like the Evil Dead, but I can also like I can't define the evil and what are the rules here. It's just like this stuff's just going to kill you. You're going to be shoved in a clock, eaten by a piano, or killed by a mattress, or a cat's going to vomit blood and fill the room and drown you. And it's like, why and what and who? And
Well, I think that's like the comedic elements of it, where it's like it's never meant to be taken seriously, but it's like just weird unto its own part.
Yeah.
Because like there's some part in the interview, like I watched some of the interview that he had, and he said like they wanted to make intentionally bad effects, but they also wanted to try to do as many as effects as they could possibly do.
Yeah, it was something about like we want to titillate the audience, but it will be bad at this. It was some kind of weird like, what the fuck does that mean?
But they also had like a lot of like interesting ways they did things.
Yeah,
because there's the part where like the girl like dissolves into like the blood fountain or whatever.
Yeah,
when the room just starts becoming blood.
Yes.
So the way they did that effect is I guess they shot it on video. And they did the chroma key, or like because they're keying out the blue, and so they had her like squirming on the ground naked. And the crew would like pour blue paint on top of her, and then she would start to chroma key out because she was starting to be covered in blue. It's like that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, that is.
What'd you do at work today, son? I poured blue paint on a naked lady. Did you mean to do that? Yes.
Yeah. Did you have to pay for that experience?
Did you have to go on a train and an unmoving train and buy a lady a bottle of wine before you did that?
Now, were the movies that were called House here? I never followed up on this, but the movies, remember they made movies here that were called House?
Yeah, wasn't like Bill Maher one of those?
I think so. It was something weird like that. I didn't follow up on it, but I was thinking when I was watching this, is like, are the American versions of House like a follow-up on this, or is this his own thing? Yeah, I didn't follow up on it. So
What I vaguely remember those, I think it was like almost like an anthology.
Yeah, because there was House, and there was House 2, the second story, and
But I remember like one had like it was like some Vietnam veteran, and he's being haunted by Vietnam things in his house.
Yeah.
Oh no, that's actually just the first movie.
Oh, okay.
Roger Cobb is a Vietnam vet whose career as a horror novelist has taken a turn for the worse when his son Jimmy mysteriously disappears while visiting his aunt's house. Huh. It's another aunt horror thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if this has anything to do with the other one.
I didn't know either.
But also like that said here was 85, so I'd kind of doubt. Because also like I said, like House, the Japanese one, didn't become like famous till 2009. So
yeah, I never know what those avant-garde movie people are doing. I always imagine like David Lynch sitting in a room somewhere, like, oh, is this am I can latch onto. What was I doing? There it is. So anyway, House, 1977. Check it out.
it's fucking. Or just watch the YouTube clips of it.
Yeah,
just watch the YouTube clips where the chick gets eaten by the piano. You'll pretty much get the whole movie.
It's the best part.
Yeah, Yeah, because like when the chick, I remember that I've seen the YouTube clip of the chicken eat by the piano, and that just reminded me of like Deathbed, that movie that Patton also talks about. Deathbed, the bed that eats people.
Yeah.
But here they actually do have beds, plural, that eats a person.
They don't really show it; they just imply it.
Yeah, she gets it has a lot of weird stuff where like they have hitting her with mattresses while there's like filming her underneath like a glass table that spins around in circles. And then she just disappears.
Yeah.
And then that was like one of the director's daughter's nightmares, is that she's talking about how like when they'd like go out to the country, there'd be like you'd have to like bring these mattresses outside to air out every once in a while. So there's just like a closet of these mattresses, and when she'd open the closet, basically she'd just get, or she'd try to move these mattresses, she was too small and they just like fall on top of her and she could barely move them. And so she had nightmares of basically the mattresses trying to eat her.
Yeah.
I like kung fu and in the movie, and she like defends herself. There's a part where like the wood attacks her, and then she like fights off all the wood, and she's like, "Oh, it's just an optical illusion," which is what they say for like the first like 4 kills, until eventually it's like, "Oh, something weird is going on."
Yeah, there doesn't seem to be a lot of like these people don't have good self-preservation skills.
And then there's a part at the end where Kung Fu basically gets eaten by a lamp.
Yeah.
But then her like her lower torso, I imagine, like somehow escapes the lamp to kick the cat face to cause the house to start to destroy itself, but then not.
Yeah. Yeah, it was hard to understand what was going on. Like, where are these legs and what do they mean? Is this sex?
And I don't know if like Kung Fu is like if like something happened where like her just like her like she lost her pants or whatever, like or if that was supposed to be like special, like they're just shorts, or she's just fighting in her underwear the whole time. I couldn't really tell.
Yeah, those weird like what would you call those, like sumo looking like diaper pants? It's like what are
Well, it's just like underwear, but then it has like bows on the side. It's like, is that underwear or not?
Yeah, I was wondering about that myself.
And it's like plaid underwear.
Yeah. It's a strange movie. But I kind of assumed it would be.
Yeah. I told you that in advance.
Straightforward. Like, yeah, let's follow this from the beginning to the end.
I was having a hard time finding horror movies from the Criterion Collection. It's like, well, I know this one is a horror movie. And I guess it's... Yeah, it basically is.
Yeah, it's a horror movie. I mean, it's not scary. It's just weird. But
yeah.
But Evil Dead's sort of like that, too. It's
like
Evil Dead's not scary. It's just strange.
Well, Evil Dead 2. Evil Dead 1 is supposed to be a scary movie, with the whole tree rape thing. Like, that's pretty... Because that one's... The first Evil Dead is just basically a straight-up horror movie, but Evil Dead 2 is a comedy horror movie.
Yeah, the first Evil Dead is something that, like, it's... when I watched it, it's been analyzed so much, I didn't see it as a horror movie. But I guess if I just sat down and like, I'm just gonna watch Evil Dead and didn't know anything about it, it's like, yeah, that's kind of scary and strange. Yeah, this reminded me a lot of that.
Well, definitely Evil Dead 2, because even like Evil Dead 2, that part where like basically the house comes alive, laughs at him, and just vomits blood on him, gallons and gallons of blood on him, and even like blood starts to go from red to green, which is the exact same things that happened here. Yes. And it's like this weird, because like I'm pretty sure he never saw this movie, so he's not grabbing from this. Like I just know that he and his group of friends were really into like, they really like the Three Stooges, and so like that movie's kind of supposed to be like a Three Stooges horror movie. But then we're just going to throw a ridiculous amount of blood and all this stuff in. It's just weird, the synergy to happen cross-culturally and without, like, there's not, like, a common movie that, like, both of them saw or whatever. Or, like, what they're grabbing from.
Yeah. Yeah, it was, just two sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
Just Evil Dead is more, like I said, Western civilization, we have Shakespeare. We know how to tell. We know how to tell stories. I'll always come back to that. I've revisited that many times because smart people wrote it in a book that I read. So,
But also, Evil Dead 2 and House are 10 years apart from each other too.
yeah, one thing I'll give this movie, as unfun as it was to watch in parts of it, it is way ahead of its time.
Yeah.
If I didn't watch this movie straight out and had no information about it, I'd assume it's like, oh, it's like a mid '80s.
Yeah.
Type.
Yeah.
Yeah, it has a very modern look to it.
I don't like Tokyo Drifter. I kind of had the same kind of thing. That was also a spastically told story that didn't make a lot of sense, but also like I thought that was a like late 70s movie because like they don't have a lot of money to throw at Japanese movies, so like what would look like a 70s movie stuff would be like a 80s movie to them or whatever. You know what I'm talking about. It was like, oh, that was made in the 60s. Like they're made because you see like old Godzilla movies, they're shot in black and white, and like those are supposed to be like the big successful movies in Japan. Like I don't know, like there's this vividly color 60s Japanese movie with a lot of weird shit.
Yeah, they had colored film. Right?
And even more like we're watching Kurosawa movies and like stuff made around the same time, and all his stuff's in black and white.
Yep. So it also saves you a lot of money.
Yeah.
Make all the costumes purple. It's like, no one would know. All right. So anyway, House. Check it out. Hansu. It's a Japanese name. House. I don't know.
Probably.
I assume so. I speak about as much Japanese as no one. So. Language. Definitely don't know anything about languages that don't have a Latin alphabet. Well, is there anything else?
No.
All right. This week for the American Greed Factory podcast, this is Nathan.
And this is Conlon. Goodbye, America.